Boris Johnson is the new British Prime Minister. He pledges to take the UK out of the EU on October the 31st. He says, no ifs or buts, the buck stops with me. There was the first ever demonstration to stop a Prime Minister's car in London as he made his way to see the Queen. In the US, Robert Mueller, called to testify to Congress, says his report in no way exonerates President Trump over allegations of Russian interference in his election. And having a heat wave, record temperatures around Europe, with Paris expected to have its hottest day on record sometime tomorrow. Thank you very much for being with us. New names in the key jobs in the cabinet of the new British Prime Minister. Let's give you those names now. Dominic Raab has been named as Foreign Secretary. Priti Patel, the Home Secretary or Interior Minister. And Sajid Javid has been named as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, otherwise known as Finance Minister. Boris Johnson took over then as Britain's Prime Minister this Wednesday, succeeding Theresa May with a promise to take the country out of the European Union on October the 31st. No ifs or buts, said Johnson. On his way to see Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace, climate protesters stopped his official vehicle and police escort. This an unprecedented scene in the London capital. Johnson is a divisive figure in the UK in what are very divisive times. And later outside 10 Downing Street, Johnson revealed yet another persona. His delivery, usually bumbling, in some way disarming, took on a more statesmanlike air. His aim very much fixed on the EU and the issue of Brexit.
I say next to our friends in Ireland and in Brussels and around the EU, I am convinced we can do a deal without checks at the Irish border, because we refuse under any circumstances to have such checks, and yet without that anti-democratic backstop. In the event of a no-deal outcome, we will have that extra lubrication of the £39 billion. And whatever deal we do, we will prepare this autumn for an economic package to boost British business and to lengthen this country's lead as the #1 destination in this continent for overseas investment.
Let's bring in now Benedict Pavi, who's awaiting us in London. Benedict, thanks for being with us. I know you've been following this throughout the day, and what a day it's been there in London. Tell us more about the new faces in the cabinet. They're faces that we know, but they've got new roles.
Indeed. I think the first thing to say is that there have been 15 sackings out of 23 people in the cabinet. This is a ruthless reshuffle by the new UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, an ex-Foreign Secretary, ex-Mayor of London, internationally known, and he is making his message very clear. This is a no-deal cabinet. He wants to prepare the United Kingdom to leave the EU, come what may, do or die, as he said, by the 31st of October. And so this is the new team who's going to be carrying out this mission. So the ex-Home Secretary Sajid Javid becomes the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, replacing Philip Hammond. That is a very powerful position, of course, and definitely a promotion for Sajid Javid. The new Foreign Secretary is Dominic Raab. He, of course, you'll remember, is he was the second Brexit Secretary. Speaking of Brexit Secretaries, the former Brexit Secretary, who was the third in that incarnation, is Steve Barclay, and he remains Brexit Secretary. So that's one of the few who remains, and not just in the government, but also in post. The new Home Secretary is Priti Patel. And interestingly, Michael Gove, who of course was also running for the leadership against Boris Johnson, he becomes effectively an enforcer of that Brexit delivery, and possibly of a delivery of a no deal. But the breaking news here, Mark, is that we just re-entered. We went outside in Whitehall, where there are many, there's the Treasury, there's all kind of Foreign Office right next to me, actually opposite me, and there are a growing number of protesters who were extremely vocal already around about 4 o'clock when Boris Johnson was making his speech. And what we've had is a growing number of police reinforcement coming. So could this be a message this time from Remainers, people who are very unhappy at seeing the Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister and basically these changes of government who are making their voices known, it looks like a quite tense situation outside the gates of Downing Street.
Benedict Pavio, we await more throughout the evening from you. Thank you very much indeed, Benedict Pavio there in London. Next, a moment that many have been waiting for. Robert Mueller called to face questions before the US Congress. The 74-year-old former FBI chief and veteran prosecutor said under oath that his report did not exonerate President Donald Trump. Mueller again declined to accuse the US president of an actual crime.
More than 100 days after the release of his Russian election meddling report, Robert Mueller comes to Capitol Hill to defend it. The former special counsel's questioning before the House Judiciary Committee was centered around U.S. President Donald Trump. And within the first 5 minutes, Mueller refuted one of Trump's claims about the report.
Director Mueller, the president has repeatedly claimed that your report found there was no obstruction and that it completely and totally exonerated him. But that is not what your report said, is it?
Correct. It is not what the report said.
Mueller was brief in his exchanges and at times shaky. He said at the start he would not give any information not already spelled out in the report. But in another moment of note, Mueller described the threat posed by Russia.
Over the course of my career, I have seen a number of challenges to our democracy. The Russian government's effort to interfere in our election is among the most serious. And as I said on May 29th, this deserves the attention of every American.
Democrats wanted Mueller to give voice to his report in hopes the American people will be angered. Republicans used the hearing as a chance to attack Mueller, his credibility, and his report. Leading up to the testimony, Donald Trump said he wouldn't watch much, if any, of the hearing. But before Mueller even took his seat, the president tweeted 9 times about Mueller and his investigation, an indication of where Trump's mind is focused. And not without reason. Democrats hope Mueller's testimony will increase public pressure to impeach Trump, or at least hurt him in the 2020 election.
Federal regulators have fined Facebook $5 billion for privacy violations. New oversight and restrictions on its business are to be imposed. The regulators are only holding CEO Mark Zuckerberg personally responsible in a limited fashion. The fine's the largest the Federal Trade Commission has levied on a tech company, though it won't make much of a dent for a company that had nearly $56 billion in revenue last year. France is to allow IVF for lesbians. Bioethics reform was a campaign promise of President Emmanuel Macron. The French president, though, is taking an electoral gamble nonetheless in the wake of widespread anti-gay marriage protests before his election. However, today, polls show that almost 2/3 of French back IVF for lesbians.
It's a step change in reproductive rights. France could make medically assisted procreation legal for same-sex couples and single women. MAP is currently only permitted for heterosexual couples who've been married or living together for more than 2 years. Women of childbearing age are allowed to use it, and Social Security covers the cost if she is under 43 years old. An estimated 2,000 to 4,000 French women currently travel abroad each year to undergo treatment, mostly to Spain, Belgium, Denmark and the Netherlands. To make help more available at home, existing laws need an update, which could also include more guarantees for the lesbian parent who doesn't carry the child. Other proposals include allowing women to freeze their eggs from their early 30s. Donors will no longer be entirely anonymous. Adult children could access some details about them, and restrictions on stem cell research will be relaxed. But using a surrogate mother will remain illegal, as will post-mortem fertilisation.
The news there that IVF soon perhaps available to lesbians here in France. We'll watch all developments on that story. And we're staying here, Paris, bracing for the hottest day on record. It's scheduled to happen tomorrow. Today, though, almost hit that kind of high. The heatwave, though, isn't just restricted to France.
It's the same scene all across the continent. Here, children cool off in Belgium, which saw record temperatures Wednesday, with the government issuing its first ever code red weather alert.
It's almost 40 degrees. Keeping the kids at home is not an option.
Playing in a fountain was not an option for 600 Eurostar passengers who got stuck for 2 hours in the heat when their train broke down outside of Brussels. The neighboring Netherlands also broke heat records Wednesday and is set to break them again on Thursday, when temperatures from France to Germany climb over 40 degrees Celsius, over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Cities are particularly vulnerable to the heat, a phenomenon known as the urban heat island, in part caused by asphalt and concrete which absorb energy during the day and re-emit it at night, preventing the air from cooling down. To help sleepless Parisians, the French capital has left select parks open overnight.
We've been here for about 4 hours. Obviously, it's cooler in the park.
Down south in Italy, sweltering tourists have been cooling off the traditional way, with gelato. While up north in the UK, the London Zoo's animals have been enjoying frozen treats of their own.
It's the first time with an ice lolly. We've been encouraging Azim to swim more in the pool to help cool down.
Europe's latest heat wave is caused by the same weather pattern that brought hot air flowing up from North Africa last month, making it the hottest June on record.
Oh, I would love to be in that lake right now. Time for sport, though. Caravan joins us on a boiling hot day, and I can't imagine what's happening if you're riding in the Tour de France right now. But I do understand your smile, which you're kind of like suppressing a little. It's out there because there's a Frenchman still in yellow, isn't there?
Yes, Julien Alaphilippe is still in yellow ahead of the last 3 mountain stages and that stage, of course, in Paris on a Sunday. But for now, stage 17 was actually a solo victory finally, because we've seen a bunch of sprint finishes. This time it was Italy's Matteo Trentin who had that solo win. The Mitchelton Scott rider riding in at the front for most of that stage after taking part in an early breakaway. A group of 33 riders had managed to get away from that first pack. Then Trentin moved clear of that leading group about 14 kilometers from the finish line just before the start of the final climb of the day. He finished nearly 40 seconds ahead of Casper Asgreen and Greg van Avermaet. The overall contenders, well, they crossed more than 20 minutes later, but there were no changes in the overall standings as Trentin and the rest of the breakaways were no threat in the overall classification. Let's take a look at that overall classification to see that indeed Julien Alaphilippe is still at the top with that yellow jersey, with the defending champion Geraint Thomas still in second place overall, 1 minute and 35 seconds behind. It's now on to the final battles in the Alps with 3 grueling mountain stages left before Paris, and still no clear favorite for the title. The most open race we've had in about 30 years, with the first 6 riders separated by just 2 minutes and 14 seconds. A very small margin considering all the stages, the mountain stages that we still need to go through, because 2 minutes in the mountains, it's really nothing. A little rough day and you can be out of contention. And of course, Julien Alaphilippe still in yellow, Thibaut Pinot still in 4th place, which means that there are 2 Frenchmen who can still hold on to hold on to the yellow jersey or win the Tour de France, perhaps 34 years after the last round.
And I'm hearing what you're saying, but I'm still rooting for Geraint Thomas of Wales. But we'll see what happens.
Which one of us wins.
If a Frenchman wins, I'd be quite happy too. Caravan, thank you very much indeed, especially to see you smile. That's great. Now let's stay with sport. Medals for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics have been unveiled with exactly a year to go until those games. The unveiling of the medals, designed by Junichi Kawanishi, was the main attraction of an extravagant ceremony in the Japanese capital to commemorate the landmark.
The countdown is on to Tokyo 2020. With 1 year to go before the Olympics, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says everything is on track.
The last 6 years have passed very quickly, and I'm happy to hear that the preparations have been carried out as planned.
Olympics chief Thomas Bach was also enthusiastic.
I can really say that I have never seen any Olympic city being so ready with their preparations 1 year before the Games as Tokyo already is.
200,000 people have already signed up to become a volunteer during next year's Games for just 80,000 spots. More than 7.5 million residents applied to buy tickets too. Demand was so high, organisers are having to hold a second lottery. It hasn't always been smooth sailing though. The head of Japan's Olympic Committee, Tsunekazu Takeda, announced his resignation in March. French authorities are investigating accusations of bribery. Another recurring worry when it comes to hosting the international event is the cost. Tokyo's original estimate was $7 billion, but the latest version of the budget puts it at over $12 billion. It'll be the first time the Japanese capital hosts the Olympics since 1964. Tokyo wants the Games to be modern, with 100% renewable energy and cutting-edge technology. On Wednesday, organisers unveiled the 2020 medals, gold, silver and bronze extracted from old gadgets.
Tokyo Olympics in a year's time, fingers crossed. I might even be going to it, you never know. For more news, stay with us here. You're watching France 24.